They were once one of the most powerful families in the Lowcountry, but today the Murdaugh name has been tarnished thanks to mysterious deaths, countless financial crimes, and murder. Here's how one family made it to the top and then came crashing down. Long before the Murdaugh name became infamous in the Lowcountry of South Carolina, family patriarch Randolph Murdaugh Sr. was a fresh-out-of-law school attorney, starting his one-man practice in Hampton in 1910. That practice would eventually grow into the PMPED law firm, one of the most powerful personal injury litigation groups in the region. But Randolph Sr. had political aspirations too. In 1920, he became the solicitor for the 14th Judicial Circuit, granting him prosecuting authority over 5 counties in the Lowcountry area.
The prosecutor is in charge of all the criminal cases and interacts with sheriffs and other elected officials.
He proved himself to be skilled in both positions. Over the course of 2 decades, Randolph Sr. became known for his fearlessness in the courtroom, taking on corrupt politicians and businessmen alike. He also had no problem using his position as solicitor to send potential clients to his personal law firm for representation. He died in 1940 when a train collided with his car on the tracks outside of Varnville, an accident that may or may not have been intentional on his part. But before he passed, he took action to ensure his son, Randolph Buster Jr., would succeed him as solicitor. Buster held the position for 46 years, at which point his son, Randolph Randy III, took over the seat. He remained solicitor until 2005, meaning that a Murdaugh was in control of prosecution in a large portion of the Lowcountry for 85 years. In the years following Randolph Sr.'s death, his son Buster grew the family's law firm and its fortune, and he began with taking on the Charleston and Western Carolina Railway Company, the company that owned the train that killed his father. Buster filed a $100,000 wrongful death suit against the railway company. The case was settled, and the total amount Buster made was never disclosed, but it set a precedent that PMPED would follow for decades. With the help of a South Carolina law that made it easy to forum shop, essentially trying cases in jurisdictions they knew would give them a better chance of winning, the firm built its business on personal injury lawsuits. And CSX, the company Charleston and Western Railway Company eventually became, was a huge target. According to Forbes, between 1992 and 2002, PMPED filed 4 dozen times against CSX, winning over $18.8 million. By the time Alec joined the family firm, it was a powerhouse, and the Murdaugh family had more money and influence than many people could dream of.
Quite a following here in the South, in South Carolina, and very connected.
Alec, his wife Maggie, and their sons, Buster and Paul, lived on a 48-acre, multi-million-dollar estate called Moselle. They lived a life of luxury, and it seems as though they were untouchable. On July 8, 2015, the body of 19-year-old Stephen Smith was found in the middle of a road about 15 miles from Moselle. At the time, Smith's death was ruled a hit and run. Investigators believe that he had been struck down while walking near his car, which had run out of gas. But according to reports obtained by the Island Packet, the coroner at one point said Smith had a head wound consistent with being shot in the head, along with a defensive wound on his hand. A report from the medical examiner, though, said that Smith's head wound was the result of being hit by a car mirror, even though no glass was found at the scene.
That road essentially was clean. Nothing on it. No parts, no glass, no fragments, no anything.
In a report filed by SCHP investigator Todd Proctor, Proctor wrote that he spoke with the medical examiner and claimed, "I asked her why she stated that in the report, and her answer was because he was found in the road. She had no evidence other than that for the statement being put in the report." According to Fitz News, the name Murdaugh appeared over 40 times during the investigation, with Buster being singled out as possibly having some involvement. But no one from the family was ever actually interviewed, and no one has ever been charged in connection to Smith's death. Stephen's mother, Sandy, told the Hampton County Guardian that she believed it might have been a hate crime, as Stephen was openly gay. In 2021, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, reopened the case, and in 2023, Smith's death was ruled a homicide. That investigation remains ongoing. On February 26, 2018, Gloria Satterfield, who had worked as the Murdaugh's housekeeper for over 2 decades, died at Moselle. During Maggie's call to 911, she told the operator that Satterfield had fallen down the brick steps outside.
Do you know if she's ever had a stroke or anything before?
Ma'am, can you stop asking her to stop?
I already have them on the way.
Alec told first responders that Satterfield had tripped over the family dogs. An autopsy was never performed, and Satterfield's death was initially listed as natural on her death certificate. Following the incident, Alec offered to help Gloria's sons, Tony Satterfield and Brian Harriet, file a wrongful death claim against his homeowner's insurance as a means of looking out for the family. Alec also convinced them to use another lawyer, Corey Fleming, and a banker, Chad Westendorf, to negotiate the settlement on their behalf. Both Fleming and Westendorf were close personal friends of Alec's. There was an insurance payout to the tune of $4.3 million, $2.7 million of which was meant to go to the Satterfield family, but they never saw any money. Instead, it was funneled into a personal bank account Alec owned. The scheme was eventually uncovered, and Alec later testified that he'd made up the whole dog thing to better his chances of getting a settlement. As for Satterfield, in 2021, SLED announced that it was opening an investigation into her death, and in 2022, it was decided her body would be exhumed and re-examined. By 2019, rumors about the Murdaughs were swirling.
I was at the hardware store one day, and somebody saw Maggie Murdaugh walk by, and they said, "There goes old Maggie Murder."
And it was about to get worse. On February 23, 2019, Paul, his girlfriend Morgan Doughty, and several friends, Anthony Cook, Mallory Beach, Connor Cook, and Miley Altman, made plans to go to a house party and oyster roast on Parky Island, which they would get to via Paul's family boat. Before they left, Paul used his older brother Buster's ID to buy alcohol for the underage group. They spent a few hours at the party and then around midnight decided to head back. According to reports, Paul pushed for them to make a stop at a bar in Beaufort, where he and Connor had shots. Just after 1 a.m., the group returned to the boat. Both Morgan and Miley later told investigators that Paul was drunk and combative, and that he was driving the boat recklessly. At around 2:20, the boat crashed, throwing Mallory overboard. In spite of a search being done that night by first responders, Mallory wasn't found until 8 days later. Her body was eventually located 5 miles from where the boat crashed. Before the others were taken to the hospital, Paul allegedly tried to deny being behind the wheel.
Paul called his granddad and was like, "Yeah, it was Cotton Top that did it. Cotton Top is Connor's nickname."
And in spite of evidence that alcohol was involved, Paul was never given a field sobriety test at the scene. When his blood was drawn at the hospital hours later, the alcohol content was at 0.24, 3 times the legal limit. It seems Alec wanted to do damage control as well. He was seen by hospital staff trying to speak to each of the survivors about their version of events before the cops could. Paul was charged with 3 felony counts for boating under the influence and causing Mallory's death. He pleaded not guilty. Her family also filed a wrongful death suit against the Murdaughs, the first in a series of financial hits that the family would eventually suffer.
This is Alec Murdaugh at 4147 Moselle Road. I need the police to answer immediately.
On June 7, 2021, Alec called police to Moselle to report that he'd found his wife and younger son had been shot and killed. According to Alec, he left the house around 9 p.m. to visit with his mother, who had dementia, and he texted Maggie to let her know that he'd be back soon. When he returned just after 10, he claims he found Maggie and Paul's bodies by the dog kennels on the property. Investigators later confirmed they had both been shot multiple times with more than one gun. The killings threw the Murdaughs back into the spotlight. Were they related to Paul's boating accident 2 years earlier? Did someone else have some sort of vendetta against the family? By all appearances, they wanted answers. Alec's brothers, Randy and John Marvin, appeared on Good Morning America and said that Paul had received threats before his death.
But the person that did this is out there, and there's information, however big or however small it is.
In light of the killings, prosecutors announced that they will be dropping the boating under the influence charges against Paul. By the end of the month, Alec and Buster had put up a $100,000 reward for information related to the deaths. But there were other rumors starting. In September 2021, People magazine spoke with a law enforcement source who said that Maggie had met with a divorce attorney 6 weeks before she was killed. It later came out she had also discovered Alec had been taking opioids, along with finding correlated searches on her phone. Records showed that Paul left Alec a voicemail a month before he died, saying, quote, "Mom found several bags of pills in your computer bag." On September 4th, 2021, Alec was once again dealing with the police, only this time he was the victim, or so it seemed at first. Around 1:30 p.m., first responders were called out to a Hampton County road where Alec had been shot. He was taken to a hospital in Savannah and treated for what SLED called a superficial gunshot wound to the head. Alec claimed at the time that he had been stopped on the road because of a flat tire when a truck passing by had turned around and a man got out and shot him. But his story fell apart pretty quickly. That someone from the truck turned out to be Curtis Eddie Smith, a longtime friend and former client of Alec's. On September 14th, Smith was arrested on several charges, including aggravated assault and battery, assisted suicide, and insurance fraud. Alec's attorney said that he had been depressed following Maggie and Paul's deaths and had assumed his life insurance policy included a suicide clause. Alec allegedly hired Smith to kill him so that his remaining son Buster would be able to cash in on his $10 million policy. But Smith tells a different story. According to him, Alec was worried about SLED's investigation into the Moselle shootings, and he knew he was being watched. Smith is also adamant that he didn't actually shoot Alec.
I figured I'd scare some sense into him. I fired it up in the air.
Smith claims that the two struggled and that Alec's head injury was the result of him falling on the asphalt after the gun went off. Alec pretty quickly admitted to his part in the plan, and he was eventually charged with insurance fraud, conspiracy, and filing a false police report. Alec would later claim to have struggled with opioids for decades. That's an expensive habit, and Alec was apparently taking money through PMPED to fund it. The Friday before he was shot, Alec's financial misdeeds had finally seemed to catch up with him. PMPED confronted him after hiring a forensic accountant to conduct an investigation into what the law firm said were misappropriated funds. According to the New York Times, the firm agreed that Alec should resign. While the total amount of money he took wasn't disclosed, several inside sources claimed to various outlets that it was over $1 million. The next Monday, Alex released a statement regarding his not firing, in which he also said he was heading to rehab and that the murders of my wife and son have caused an incredibly difficult time in my life. I am immensely sorry to everyone I've hurt, including my family, friends, and colleagues. But PMPED released its own statement, and the firm did not mince words, calling Alec's actions a violation of PMPED standards and policies. It further said that law enforcement and the South Carolina bar had been notified. The law firm later released a follow-up statement in which it said, "He lied and he stole from us." On September 8th, Alec's license to practice law in South Carolina was suspended by the state Supreme Court.
We do have breaking news just into our newsroom. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division have taken Alec Murdaugh into custody.
Alec's stint in rehab didn't last long, and it wasn't going to shield him from the legal repercussions of his actions. On October 14th, 2021, he was arrested on suspicion of misappropriating settlement funds in the Gloria Satterfield lawsuit. It was only the beginning. On November 19th, Alex was hit with 27 more charges for his financial crimes. He was accused of stealing and laundering close to $5 million. December saw another 21 charges, bringing the total amount of money Alec was alleged to have defrauded to over $6 million. In January 2022, there were 23 more charges. That's 71 total for those keeping score at home. He would eventually be charged with over 100 separate crimes, ranging from tax evasion to money laundering and fraud. On July 12th, he was officially disbarred for pretty obvious reasons, and 2 days later, he was finally indicted for the murders of Maggie and Paul. During his trial, Alex earlier claimed that he hadn't been near the dog kennels the evening of the crime was brought into question, thanks to a Snapchat video that Paul had taken just before he was killed.
Come here, Cash. Come here, Bob. Cash. Quit.
Paul's friend Rogan Gibson was the person Paul had allegedly taken the video for. He testified that during a phone call with Paul just before the video was filmed, he heard both Maggie's and Alex's voices in the background. There was also the gun prosecutors alleged was responsible for Maggie's death, a .300 blackout assault-style rifle. While investigators were unable to find the gun, which had been a Christmas gift for Paul and Buster, experts testified that shell casings at the crime scene matched others found elsewhere at Moselle. But the most damning evidence against Alec came from GPS and other phone data. Throughout the evening the night of the murders, the Murdaughs sent several messages and made a number of calls to one another. But many of those were wiped from Alex's phone. There was, however, a large increase in steps logged on his phone immediately after the time investigators believed Maggie and Paul were shot. At the same time, Maggie's Face ID was activated briefly, but her phone stayed locked, suggesting someone else may have tried to use it. And while Alec did go see his mother, his GPS shows that he drove up to 80 miles an hour to get there and back, when the speed limit was only 55. Alec admitted he lied to police initially about being at the scene and blamed his opioid addiction for making him distrustful.
I would get in these situations or circumstances where I would get paranoid thinking, and it could be anything that triggered it.
It didn't matter. On March 2nd, he was found guilty on both murder counts and sentenced to life in prison. In September 2023, Alec pleaded guilty to 22 federal financial crimes, resulting in a 40-year prison sentence. 2 months later, he took a plea deal for the state charges. He was given 27 years for those. He was also ordered to pay $8.7 million back to his victims.
It's not about the money. It's about what we lost. I lost my son. That would never be replaced.
And then there are the individual lawsuits. In late 2021, Alec's assets were frozen at the Beach family lawyer's request. Those were eventually liquidated to be dispersed amongst his victims. In February 2024, a court ordered that 29% would go to Mallory's family. The Beach family would also receive an additional $500,000 from Progressive, the boat's insurer. In October of that year, they had previously won a suit against Parker's, the store where Paul bought the alcohol, that was settled in July 2023 for $15 million. In October 2021, PMPED announced it was filing its own suit against Alec in order to recover the money he stole from the firm. As part of the February 2024 court order, the law firm was given 14% of Alec's remaining assets. In September 2022, Connor Cook filed a lawsuit against Alec in relation to the 2019 boating accident. In it, he alleged that not only should Alec have prevented Paul from driving the boat intoxicated, but that Alec later tried to have Cook held responsible as the person driving instead of Paul. As part of the settlement with Parker's, Cook and the remaining survivors of the crash received $3 million, which was split amongst them. In October 2024, Cook dropped his lawsuit against Alec. But as one final blow, in January 2025, a judge ordered Alec to pay $14.8 million to Nautilus Insurance, the company he defrauded in the Gloria Satterfield case. As of November 2025, Alec's attorneys are in the process of appealing to the state Supreme Court for a new murder trial based on suspected jury tampering and lack of physical evidence.